Dear colleagues in the audience and also on the screens, I want to introduce you to our raRoB tool, a tool that is developed for the rapid assessment of risk of bias in observational epidemiological studies. And in the start, I want to emphasize our tool is really or still a work in progress, so we appreciate every comment you will give us, which is valuable to finalize our development. There it is. So I will give you a short introduction into the aims and into the development of our tool. Then we'll go into the tool a little bit to look for the aspects, and I will show you the next steps that will come in our development, and then sum up everything a little bit to some take-home messages. So maybe you know this situation when you're at a Friday evening, it's 6 o'clock, you have a lot of work, and on top of that, there's just coming in a request to assess a new published study, and in the best case, you should finish this on the next day. That maybe someone knows this, such short-term requests, and to assess this epidemiological studies or the publication. And when we look at the critical appraisal, this is a process of different sub-processes. This is really usually a long-term thing, and we don't want to do a systematic review or meta-analysis here. So we just need one little thing, little in quotes, the risk of bias assessment, because we want to look, is this study useful? Is there can we rely on this on the results of the study? And so we just have to look: is the methodology we look for the quality of the methodology. So because of this, we want to use the risk of bias. And as we see, there are a lot of tools out there we can use that are available. But for us, it's in this case not really suitable, because we want to have a really fast tool now. We don't want a deep appraisal of the study, and also in the case if you're if you're the scientist that have the subject knowledge, but not the epidemiological knowledge, most of the tools are really not suitable, because you need a training with these tools, and so we are focused on that. For this, we wanted to develop our raRoB tool with the following aims. We have the completeness, of course. We want to have all relevant types of bias covered for the main types of observational studies. We wanted to be rapid in that sense, so that we have a concise tool for multiple study designs. It should be usable for interdisciplinary appraisal teams. And we want to have clarity of the assessments, that we have the base on which the assessments were made. And this is also, the transparency is also the part that will improve also the usability in interdisciplinary appraisal teams. So with this aims in mind, we have our initial development. We looked for the tools that are inside of our scope. We looked for this that address observational studies and that address the risk of bias at some point. We found 152 critical appraisal tools. We found 3 major reviews that also worked on that topic, and also some known or used tools by working group members. Got this 152 critical appraisal tools, and from this on we started to select. We selected the tools and discarded author guidelines and reporting guidelines, because they were just about the description quality of the study. Tools that are too selective, that are just selected for certain questions or certain study types or designs, and tools that are too old or not meeting current standards. The next step was then to aggregate domains and items to concentrate for for common domains and items to get and to abstract them to generic aspects so we can get a quintessence of the tools that are already published. And for this we got our prototype of the raRoB tool. This prototype was developed with advice from BFR and external experts, and then with support of the EFSA we started to test them in in 3 test cycles, like a pilot, the test cycle and the second test cycle, and let potential users like BFR and EFSA staff, that would be the target users here, the tool in these cycles, and also we iterative in between we consulted the experts that we also had in the initial development. So our current tool is now a compilation of 7 domains with 15 items that can be assessed. We have the selection domain, we have the exposure and the outcome measurement, of course the important confounding, loss to follow up, the statistical analysis, and the selective reporting. So if we look at our rapidity and usability aim, we looked at different points here. We looked at we wanted to have a clear user interface that is easy to understand and to use fast. We wanted to have an adaptation according to study design, signaling questions for each item, and the calculation of an overall risk of bias. So for the clear user interface, we look into our tool directly. We have an implementation in Excel for the development, just to have an easy access to develop further and to test it. And in this you can see we have a list, it is a really clear user interface, a really clear platform here. We see just the list of our domains and our items that can be rated directly. And with this drop-down menus where you can see, please select. And in this we can rate them according to 5 different single categories, like high for high risk of bias, some concerns for some concerns, undecided, no judgment in the case that we don't have the expertise in this case, in this item or this domain. This then will be ignored for the overall risk of bias later. Then low for low risk of bias, and no information if we don't have any description about this item. And we have a 6th category that is non-applicable, that has a special role because it's not freely choosable by the user. This is, then I can jump into the next point, the adaptation to the study design. This is fixed when I choose this, a certain study design and the item or a domain is not applicable there, it is just switched in this template to not applicable and is deactivated for any further assessment here by the user. That is because we had in some of the, or in one of the test cycle, we had the problem that the users often had the problem to assess the relevance of the item, if it's really relevant for this study type, and we want to support the user here because we are target the user that have the subject knowledge and not the one from the epidemiology. We see here just an overview which study designs were covered, the case cohort study, case control, nested case control, cross-sectional, and case series. And we see with a minus type, these are the items that are deactivated for this. For example, in case control, due to their retrospective design, we deactivate the non-response rate, the recruitment time frame, and also both items of the follow-up, because it's not applicable in this design. So we come to the signaling questions for each item. There we made the signaling questions to give the user a support to understand what the item is really about, so that the user can directly use these questions to apply to their study, and then to know, okay, I have to assess this item by the answers to these questions. And as we also had before this adaptation to the study design, we also implemented it here for the signaling questions. Here in this example, we have the questions for the cohort study, for the confounding, and the loss to follow up. And if we switch to case control, we also have the change in the questions. We see here we have some questions that were added and which address directly the case and control groups. And in loss to follow up, as I said before, it is not applicable in case control studies due to their retrospective design. And this is also mirrored by this signaling questions. And we have our calculated overall risk of bias. If we are finished with our rating, we have a concise sheet that shows us in an overview our ratings with a color-coded signs, and also this part of the result sheet where we have some overall risk of biases which were set by the calculation, and also which could be set individually by the assessors, and also giving the reason for this. If we look into this, we see we have the calculation, we have this worst rating score and the ratio score. The worst rating score is just a severe score that just says I have a certain amount of high risk of bias, and because of this I assess this whole study as a high risk of bias. And it's really, it jumps really quick to this. And the ratio score is more like a mean value. It considers all categories here and just give you a tendency of the whole assessment. And then we have the individually choosable overall risk of bias by the assessor. They are both on the same scale. We have the possibility to get a not assessable study that in this case that either means that too many of the items weren't applicable here, or too many items weren't assessable by the assessor himself. Then a high risk of bias, a moderate risk of bias as a medium category, and also a low risk of bias. And so last but really not least, because the transparency is a really important part here, we have just in our template, we have on the same sheet, so we have it really in an overview here. We have the comment section where we can give our reason why we did the assessment of the items as we did. We can put here some quotes from the articles, we can give our own reasons, and we really recommend to use this section, because if we have two different ratings, then we have to have the information why there are maybe differences. In the end, we can maybe reconcile this, or we also have the result, okay, there are some aspects that are really difficult to understand, to rate in this context. So for the next step, as I said, the tool is still work in progress, and of course then the next step is first finalizing our test cycle and then adapt the tool according to the results and the feedback. And of course then to publish the tool, to make it available also for you, and to implement it then as a web-based app. And to sum up everything is we wanted to have a tool for short-term and individual risk of bias assessments, which provides a rapid usability for researchers in interdisciplinary appraisal teams. That means not only the well-trained epidemiologists. which provides a transparent assessment and which is systematically developed and tested. And this is the end of my presentation. I want to thank you all, all colleagues that were involved in this project, and of course all the testers that made it possible for us to further develop our tool. And I thank you for your attention, and now I'm open for questions.